You know that feeling when you do something so mortifying, your soul just packs a suitcase and leaves your body? Yeah, that was me at exactly 10:43 p.m. on Tuesday night. To understand how I ended up in this situation, let's see what happened a day ago. Flashback, 1 day ago. If someone asked me to describe my job, I'd say, imagine working in a haunted library where the ghost occasionally steps out in a three-piece suit and makes grown adults cry. That ghost? My boss, Adrian Blackwell, CEO, billionaire, ice king of the corporate tundra, the man whose cheekbones could cut diamonds and whose glare could strip paint off walls. And me, Cameron Hale, office clown, sunshine in human form, proud parent of 13 desk plants, a tragic addiction to puns, and the unfortunate habit of laughing at my own jokes. Which is why, when the elevator doors slid open that morning and Adrian Blackwell himself stepped out, every single person in the office collectively held their breath. The room went silent like we were in a horror movie, and the killer just walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in charcoal gray with a black tie so sharp it probably cost more than my rent. His eyes, icy blue, cold, sharp, swept across the room. And then, they landed on me. I froze mid-sip of my coffee, which turned into a choking fit because, of course, it did. Half the liquid sprayed down my shirt, and in the process of panicking, I dropped my pen into my coffee cup. Smooth, Cameron. Real smooth. Morning? I squeaked, trying to sound normal while looking like a raccoon caught in a trash can. Beautiful day for capitalism, huh? The silence was so loud, I could hear my career screaming for mercy. Adrian's gaze flicked over me. Coffee stain, flop sweaty panic, mug now filled with both coffee and ink, and for one horrifying second, I thought he was going to fire me on the spot. But then, nothing. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and walked past, as if I were invisible. The entire office exhaled in unison. Cameron, whispered Jenna, my cube neighbor, why do you try? Because one day, I whispered back, wringing out my coffee-soaked tie, he's going to laugh at one of my jokes. And when that day comes, I'll achieve corporate nirvana. She patted my shoulder, or unemployment. At noon, I gathered my courage. I spotted Adrien leaving his office, looking like a god carved from ice, and I seized the moment. Hey, Mr. Blackwell, I said brightly. Do you want to hear a joke? His expression said, no. His mouth said, no. I told it anyway. What do you call a plant that works in HR? I grinned, gesturing at one of the leafy babies on my desk. A personnel plant. A long pause. His eyes flicked to the plant, then back at me. His jaw clenched, and then he walked away. My coworkers snorted into their coffee mugs. Okay, I muttered, pointing at my philodendron. Don't worry, Percy. He's secretly amused. I can tell. But here's the thing. Just before his office door closed, I could have sworn. His lip twitched. Not a smile. Not even close. But a twitch. And that tiny flicker of almost expression lit me up like I'd just discovered gold. Because if I could make Adrian Blackwell twitch, maybe, just maybe, I could crack the iceberg. Later that night, as I curled up on my couch with takeout and reruns, I told myself two things. 1. Tomorrow, I will make Adrien smile. 2. Nothing in this world could possibly humiliate me more than I already had today. Spoiler alert, I was so wrong. Flashback ends. Present day. I'd just finished a long, steamy shower. My hair was dripping, my towel was barely hanging on, and I was armed with a pint of ice cream and a head full of complaints about my evil, terrifying boss. Naturally, the only logical move was to FaceTime my best friend, Tara, to vent. Except apparently, I forgot how phones work. Because when the call connected, instead of Tara's face, I was greeted by Adrian Blackwell in his study. Wearing a black shirt, sleeves rolled up, glass of red wine in hand, like some kind of moody vampire who had just finished brooding over stock prices. And me? Standing there, naked, well, towel wrapped, but one bad sneeze away from a full IMAX feature. "Oh my God!" I yelped, dropping my ice cream, fumbling with the phone like it had burned me. Wrong number! Abort mission!" I tried to hang up, but my slippery fingers betrayed me. The towel betrayed me too, because at that exact moment, it slipped. Yep, straight to the floor. There was a horrifying beat of silence, and then Adrien spoke, calm, deadpan, like I hadn't just flashed him my entire existential crisis. "If you're trying to get a raise, this is the boldest attempt I've seen." I made a noise that can only be described as a strangled pterodactyl. "No! This isn't, oh my God!" Scrambling, I dove for the towel, knocking over my lamp, tripping over my couch, and nearly concussing myself in the process. Finally wrapped, I peeked back at the screen. Adrien was still there, still watching, still sipping his wine with infuriating calm. His lips twitched, not a smile exactly, more like an evil smirk, but his eyes. Oh no. His eyes looked amused. "Relax, Hale," he said smoothly, swirling his wine like we were in some kind of twisted rom-com. "I've seen worse boardroom scandals." "Worse?" I squeaked, my voice hitting octaves usually reserved for Mariah Carey. You weren't supposed to see." Clearly. His tone was dry enough to suck the humidity out of my bathroom. But next time, try wearing clothes before placing late-night calls. And then he hung up, just like that. I sat there, towel around my waist, ice cream melting into my carpet, staring at my phone like it had personally betrayed me. "Oh my God," I whispered into the void. I just naked called my boss. My career wasn't just over. It was cremated, ashes scattered to the four winds. Tomorrow, I'd be jobless, homeless, forced to sell my plants for grocery money. And the worst part? A tiny, treacherous part of me couldn't stop replaying the way he'd looked at me. Calm, curious, amused, not disgusted, not angry, like he'd seen something he liked, which was insane, ridiculous, dangerous. And yet, lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop hearing his voice. "If you're trying to get a raise, this is the boldest attempt I've seen." My boss, the Ice King, had teased me. Teased me. And I hated how much my stomach flipped at the thought. Next day. If you've ever wanted to know what it feels like to walk into work knowing you accidentally exposed yourself to your billionaire boss, let me paint you a picture. Imagine carrying a neon sign over your head that flashes "Naked Boy, Table for One" every time you pass someone's desk. That was me, trudging into the office Wednesday morning, convinced Adrian Blackwell was about to stroll in, point at me, and announce, "This man is fired for crimes against professionalism." But when he appeared, immaculate suit, frostbitten aura, walking like the world owed him rent, he didn't even glance my way. Not once. I tried not to feel disappointed. Really, I did. By lunch, I was half convinced maybe he'd forgotten the whole thing. Maybe he had more important things to worry about, like mergers and acquisitions and whatever billionaires do for fun. And then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Well, not unknown. My stomach dropped the second I saw the initials, a B. I opened it with trembling fingers. A B. Fully clothed, I presume? I choked so hard on my sandwich that Jenna had to slap my back. "Are you okay?" she asked, wide-eyed. "Fine, totally fine," I squeaked, shoving my phone in my pocket. "Just swallowed wrong." Which was technically true. I spent the rest of lunch debating whether to respond. But by 2 p.m., I cracked. Me. Very funny. For the record, that was an accident. A B. So you don't usually video call people naked? That's reassuring. Me. No. Obviously not. I'm a respectable, pants-wearing adult. A B? I'll believe it when I see it. I nearly dropped my phone again. Did Adrian Blackwell just joke with me? Later that night. I was curled up with ramen and Netflix when my phone buzzed again, a FaceTime call. I almost didn't answer, assuming Tara wanted to laugh at me some more. But no, it was him. Adrien. I panicked, almost declined, but curiosity or insanity won. I answered. There he was, in his office, jacket off, tie loosened, dark hair mussed like he'd dragged a hand through it one too many times. He looked less like a scary CEO and more like a tired man. "Mr. Blackwell?" I croaked. He raised a brow. "Relax, Hale." "You don't have to salute. It's just a call," I blinked. Okay. But why? Are you calling me?" "I was curious," he said simply. "Wanted to see if you were actually wearing clothes this time." My jaw dropped. "Oh my God, you're never going to let that go, are you?" "Not when it's this entertaining." His voice was flat, but I swore there was a ghost of a smirk tugging at his mouth. I sputtered. "You're evil." "Efficient," he corrected. "Now, tell me, what's the point of all those plants on your desk?" The question threw me. "What? My plants?" "Yes, your little jungle, they're distracting," I gasped. "Distracting?" "They give the office character. Percy the philodendron is practically family, and I swear my pants on it, I saw Adrian Blackwell's lips twitch. Again. And just like that, we fell into conversation. Awkward at first, but somehow easy. He asked about my plants. I teased him. About his scary vampire lair of an office. He pretended to be unimpressed, but he kept asking questions. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. When I finally yawned, he said quietly, "Good night, Hale," and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart hammering. Because somewhere between his sarcasm and my babbling, the unthinkable had happened. Adrian Blackwell had chosen to call me, and I couldn't stop grinning. After a few days, it started as a one-off, then twice in a week. By the third night, I realized Adrian Blackwell had officially made me part of his routine. Every evening, somewhere between 10 p.m. and midnight, my phone would buzz with his name. Sometimes he was still in his office, sleeves rolled up, drowning in spreadsheets. Other times he was at home, glass of wine in hand, looking like a noir movie villain who'd accidentally wandered into my very non-noir life of ramen noodles and mismatched socks. And somehow, it became normal. I'd tell him about my day, office gossip, which plant looked the happiest, the time I tripped over the copier cord and almost brought down an entire row of filing cabinets. He'd respond with flat, grumpy one-liners that only made me laugh harder. "You're a liability to workplace safety," says the man who drinks wine over multi-million-dollar contracts. Fair point. The wildest part. Sometimes I swore he was actually smiling. Not big grins, of course. Adrian Blackwell wasn't built for grins, but soft little curves at the corner of his mouth when he thought I wasn't looking. And then came the night I caught him almost human. A few weeks later. It was a Thursday, about 2 weeks into this strange nightly ritual. I'd been telling him the plot of the cheesy rom-com I was watching when I noticed something. His head kept dipping. His eyes were half-lidded. His voice, when he did answer, was quieter. "Are you falling asleep?" I asked, incredulous. His eyes opened slowly, sharp blue, fixing on me. "Impossible. Impossible? Dude, you just blinked in slow motion. You're 2 seconds away from snoring into your wine glass." He scowled faintly, but his voice stayed soft. "I don't sleep easily." That made me pause. Like insomnia? A beat. He didn't look at me when he said something like that. My heart gave a little ache. The Ice King, sleepless and alone, turning to me of all people. "Well," I said brightly, pushing away the ache with a smile, "lucky for you, I'm an expert at boring people to sleep." His brow arched. Boring is an understatement. Rude. But watch this, I launched into the dullest story I could think of about alphabetizing my spice rack. I could see his eyes droop as I rambled about oregano versus basil. By the time I'd reached the great cumin crisis of last winter, his head had tilted slightly to the side. He was asleep. Adrian Blackwell, CEO billionaire, corporate ice god, asleep because of me. I grinned so wide my cheeks hurt. Whispering, I said, "Good night, Mr. Grumpy Vampire." Then I ended the call. Next day. The next morning, when I walked into work, I nearly dropped my coffee, because Adrien was standing at my desk, waiting. "Mr. Blackwell," I squeaked, nearly falling into Percy the Plant. You never come out here." He handed me a file without preamble. "Don't end calls without saying goodnight properly." And then he walked away, leaving me pink-faced and squeaking like a balloon. Jenna peeked over the divider. "Cameron, why does the man who terrifies everyone else talk to you like you're his personal teddy bear?" I flailed. "I don't know." Time passed. The calls continued. Some nights, Adrien worked while I babbled. Other nights, he just listened. Always less CEO, more man. Always softer with me than with anyone else. And then came the jealousy incident. A few months later, it was a Friday afternoon. I was at the break table when Jordan, a flirty coworker from accounting, leaned a little too close while complimenting my shirt. I laughed it off because, well, I laugh at everything. Except Adrien walked by at that exact moment. His gaze flicked to Jordan, then to me, then back to Jordan. His expression could have frozen molten lava. Jordan paled and scuttled away like he'd just seen death himself. I blinked after him. "What was that about?" "Nothing," Adrien said curtly, already walking off. Later that night, when he inevitably called, he was quieter than usual, pensive. "So," I teased, sipping instant cocoa, "about you glaring at poor Jordan like you were about to blacklist his entire bloodline." "He was too close," Adrien interrupted flatly. I blinked. "Too close? To me?" His eyes didn't waver. "Yes." Oh, my stomach flipped so violently I nearly dropped my mug. Was Adrian Blackwell, my terrifying, ice-cold boss, jealous? I grinned slowly, wickedly. Wait. Are you telling me the mighty Adrian Blackwell was jealous?" He glared. "Drink your cocoa, Hale." But his ears, slightly pink, and me, I was a goner. A few months later. It had been almost 4 months now, and it stopped being accidental. The calls weren't slips of the finger anymore, or excuses to tease me about my towel incident. They were a given, a constant. Something I started waiting for without admitting it out loud. And somewhere between the late-night banter and his grumpy comebacks, I realized Adrian Blackwell was slowly, silently carving out space in my life. Take Tuesday night, for example. I was in my kitchen, balancing my phone against a box of cereal while attempting to make pasta. Adrien, calling from his penthouse, was watching with his usual unimpressed face. "You're going to set your apartment on fire," he said flatly, as I dropped half the uncooked spaghetti on the floor. "I like to call it rustic," I said, blowing my hair out of my face. "Besides, don't billionaires have personal chefs for this sort of thing?" "Come on, I don't share employees," he deadpanned. I pouted dramatically at the camera. "You wound me." For a split second, his eyes flicked upward as if he were suppressing a laugh. Just a flicker, but enough to make me grin like an idiot. Or Thursday night. He'd been working, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, when I noticed a painting behind him. Dark strokes, harsh colors, almost angry. "You paint?" I asked, leaning closer to the screen. His jaw tightened. "Sometimes." "That's amazing," I said, beaming. "Can I see more?" "No." I blinked. Why not? They're not for anyone else to see. His voice was low, almost defensive, then softer. They're the only place I don't have to be perfect. My chest squeezed. For a moment, he wasn't the CEO or the terrifying boss. He was just Adrien, a man alone in a too-big penthouse making messy paintings no one else would ever see. So I smiled, gentle this time. Then keep them for yourself. But for what it's worth, I think it's kind of beautiful. His gaze lingered on me. Too long, too intense, enough to make my breath catch. And then there was Saturday night. I was sprawled on my couch, showing him my travel bucket list. I want to see Paris and Tokyo and maybe even Iceland if I can save up enough. Can you imagine me under the northern lights? You'd get lost in the airport, he said without missing a beat. I gasped. Rude, but fair. He smirked faintly, but then asked quieter. Why haven't you gone yet? I shrugged. Money, responsibility. My mom still needs help with bills, so maybe someday. He was silent for a long moment, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Something softer, warmer, almost protective. You'll get there, he said finally, his voice low. I'll make sure of it. The words lingered in my chest long after the call ended. A few days later, it wasn't just the calls. I started noticing things at work, too. Adrien didn't bark at me when I messed up a report. Instead, he calmly pointed out the correction, which in Adrien speak was basically a love sonnet. He didn't scowl when I brought in yet another desk plant. He didn't even comment when I nicknamed the ficus Fiona. And once, just once, I caught him watching me across the office. Not with annoyance, not even with that icy disinterest he gave everyone else, but with something that looked dangerously close to affection. A few weeks later, the lines had started to blur. Was he still my boss? Yes. Was he still terrifying? Absolutely. But he was also the man who let me chatter him to sleep when insomnia gnawed at him. The man who admitted he painted in secret. The man who remembered the tiny details of my life I hadn't even realized I'd shared. And me? I was the fool who laughed too hard at his sarcasm, who stayed awake just to catch the way his eyes softened when he finally let himself relax, who secretly wanted to be the reason he smiled for real. I told myself it was just playful banter, harmless late-night calls, nothing more. But the truth, I was already halfway gone. A few weeks later, it was a Monday morning, the kind that should have come with a warning. Don't even try today label. I walked into the office, balancing coffee, reports, and my sanity, only to find the entire floor buzzing. Have you heard? Jenna whispered dramatically. Blackwell's about to buy a company. Big merger deal. Maybe we might lose our jobs. My stomach dropped. Because that company, it was rumored to be the very partner keeping my small department afloat. I brushed it off, at least until Adrien himself walked into the office. No smile, no softness, no trace of the man who teased me about burning pasta at midnight. He was all CEO steel. In light of recent negotiations, he said, eyes scanning the room, some departments may face restructuring. Restructuring, the corporate word for you're all screwed. And just like that, my heart cracked in a way I didn't want to admit had nothing to do with my job and everything to do with him. Later that night, our nightly calls stopped. First sign that maybe I was about to get fired along with my other coworkers. No accidental FaceTimes, no grumpy lectures about my cooking. Nothing. I told myself I was too busy anyway, that it was good to have space, but the silence gnawed at me. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest leapt, only to sink again when it wasn't him. At work, I kept my distance, professional, polite, borderline robotic, because what was I supposed to do? Joke around with the man plotting to erase my job? He noticed, I could tell. His eyes lingered, His jaw tightened whenever I slipped past him without a word, but he didn't stop me, and that hurt most of all. A few weeks later. After almost 2 weeks by the end, the tension was unbearable. We were stuck in a late meeting, just the two of us. I was presenting numbers, my voice flat, my eyes glued to the slides. He didn't interrupt, didn't argue, just stared. Finally, he said, "You're different." I forced a shrug. "Just being professional, sir." The "sir" came out sharper than I intended. His eyes flickered, something pained flashing there before he masked it. "Professional?" he repeated slowly. "Is that what you call ignoring me?" "Oh, sure, why not? But also let me just remind you that it wasn't me who had stopped calling." My voice was shrieking. You have no idea." His voice came out shaky for the first time. My heart stuttered. I looked up, meeting his gaze, and there it was. The Adrien I knew. The one who'd promised I'd see the northern lights someday. The one who'd let me glimpse his messy, imperfect self. But I couldn't let myself soften. Not when my career was dangling by a thread because of him. "Never mind. You're my boss," I said, my voice low, even though it shook. "And bosses don't stay up till 2 a.m., watching their employees nearly burn down their kitchens. So maybe it's better if we remember what this is." Silence. Heavy. Crushing. He clenched his jaw like he wanted to argue. But then, something shifted on his face. Maybe guilt or fear. Instead, he just nodded once and said coldly, "As you wish." And with that, the fragile thing we'd been building shattered. A few weeks later, it was raining the night Adrian Blackwell ruined my life. Okay, dramatic, but hear me out. I was curled up on my couch in my oldest hoodie, clutching a half-eaten pint of cookie dough ice cream, trying to convince myself I didn't care, that I wasn't lying awake every night, staring at my silent phone, wishing his stupid, grumpy face would pop up again. That's when the knock came. At first, I ignored it. Who knocks on doors in the middle of a thunderstorm? Horror movies taught me better, but the pounding grew louder, more urgent. With a groan, I dragged myself up, peeked through the peephole, and almost choked on my own tongue. Adrien, standing there like some deranged cover model. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt plastered to his chest, hair dripping rain into his eyes. The perfect billionaire CEO, reduced to a soaked, desperate mess on my doormat. I yanked the door open. "Have you lost your mind?" "You're going to catch pneumonia." He didn't even flinch, just stared at me, chest heaving, like he'd sprinted here straight from Olympus. His voice was hoarse, raw. "You think you are just a distraction?" "You're the only reason I even want to come home at night." He took a pause, mostly catching his breath, and then spoke again. I was terrified, scared of what we had built, scared that I needed you more than you needed me. The fear of losing you got inside me. I thought it was better to maintain a distance just so it would hurt less, but it didn't. And then, seeing you in the office, distant from me, felt as if someone had twisted a knife inside me. I tried my best to stay away from you, but here I am, running back to you. My brain short-circuited. What? Huh? He took one step forward, water dripping onto my rug. "Cameron, I walked out of a billion-dollar dinner to be here. Do you understand what that means?" I blinked. "That your financial advisor is having a heart attack right now?" He groaned, actually groaned, dragging a wet hand down his face. "Only you would joke right now." "Well, only you would show up looking like a drowned GQ model." "Cameron?" His voice cracked, low and rough, and my laughter died instantly. His eyes, God, his eyes were unguarded for the first time, soft in a way that hit me right in the chest. "I don't want the deal. I don't want the money. I want you." Something in me snapped. All those weeks of silence, hurt, longing, gone in a rush of warmth and relief so strong I nearly stumbled. "Say it again," I whispered. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, rain-soaked and trembling, cupping my face like I was the only thing holding him upright. "I want you. Not as a distraction, not as entertainment. Just you," I grinned through the tears burning my eyes. "So, you're admitting you like me more than spreadsheets?" He let out a strangled laugh, then kissed me. Finally kissed me. Hard, hungry, like he'd been starving for me. And God, I kissed him back like I'd been waiting my whole life. By the time we broke apart, breathless, he was half soaked, half warm from me pulling him inside, and entirely mine. He flopped onto my couch, dragging me with him, his wet shirt clinging as I curled against his chest. He muttered into my hair, grumpy as ever, "Happy now? You've ruined me for sleep. I can't close my eyes without you here." I smiled against him, heart pounding, and whispered, "Good, because I'm never letting you go." He kissed my temple softly, and for the first time, Adrian Blackwell didn't look like the terrifying CEO. He looked like my home. A few weeks later, dating Adrian Blackwell was like working for Batman, except if Batman was allergic to smiling and obsessed with quarterly reports. After the whole rain-soaked confession, we didn't exactly announce to the office that Cameron Hale and his terrifying CEO are now officially making out after hours. No, Adrian insisted we keep it quiet. His words, not mine. Workplace romances complicate things. In translation, he was a grumpy coward who didn't want to admit to his board that he'd fallen for the office clown. But I agreed. Which is how I ended up living in the world's most exhausting rom-com cliché: secret dating. It started with the elevator. We were riding down to the lobby, completely alone. Adrien leaned casually against the wall, all expensive cologne and broody jawline, while I pretended not to combust beside him. At the last second, just before the doors opened, he leaned down and brushed the quickest kiss against my neck. I squeaked. The doors opened to 2 interns staring at me like I'd swallowed a squeaky toy. Adrien, of course, stepped out like nothing happened, while I stumbled after him red-faced. "Evil!" I hissed. "Distraction!" he murmured, smirking, and kept walking. A week later, I was watering my army of office plants. Adrien appeared, looming behind me like a vengeful skyscraper. "You've turned this office into a greenhouse," he said flatly. "You're welcome. Oxygen levels are through the roof." He rolled his eyes, then casually slipped a hand to the small of my back, hidden by the tallest fern. His thumb brushed my shirt in a way that made my knees wobble. "Careful, Hale," he murmured, "or I'll have to start coming down here for fresh air more often." I almost dumped water all over myself. The worst, no best, was the boardroom. We'd just finished a late meeting, everyone else gone. I was gathering files when Adrien locked the door. My heart stuttered. Sir?" I teased, arching a brow. His reply was a kiss, hard, fast, backed against the conference table. My laughter was swallowed by his mouth as his tie brushed my cheek, his hand tangled in my hair. Then, click. The door handle rattled. Someone was outside. We flew apart like guilty teenagers, me shoving papers into my arms, him straightening his tie so fast he nearly strangled himself. When the assistant walked in, Adrien was back to terrifying CEO mode, and I was red as a tomato. "Everything all right, sir?" she asked. "Fine," Adrien said smoothly. "Hale was just leaving." "Yes," I squeaked. "Definitely leaving." Leaving very professionally, she left, suspicious. Adrien waited until the door closed again before leaning down to murmur in my ear, voice wicked. "You're terrible at lying," I grinned. "Good thing you're great at kissing." He groaned, dragging a hand over his face, but his smile, tiny, real, peeked through. Dating Adrien in secret was exhausting, terrifying, and the best thing that had ever happened to me. Because behind the scowls, behind the billionaire armor, he was mine. And every stolen kiss at work was just proof we were building something worth all the sneaking around. 2 years later. If you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be waking up tangled in silk sheets with Adrian Blackwell, yes, that Adrian Blackwell, grumpy CEO, destroyer of interns' confidence, allergic to fun, I would have laughed in your face. And yet, here I was. Every morning started the same, his arm heavy around my waist, his chin buried in my hair, me groaning that I had to get up, and him. Mumbling, 5 more minutes in the sleepiest, sexiest voice imaginable. 5 minutes usually turned into 30, but I wasn't complaining. Life with Adrien turned out to be the opposite of what I expected. He wasn't just late-night kisses and broody stares. He was coffee in bed on Sundays, arguments about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It does, Adrien, and you'll never convince me otherwise. And impulsive trips to places I'd once rambled about during those first accidental calls. Because Adrien remembered. He remembered everything. The skyscraper in Tokyo I'd said I wanted to see someday, he took me there last summer. The little French cafe in Paris I'd found online at 2 a.m. He flew us there for dinner. Every single place I'd once mentioned half-jokingly, he turned into reality. And now we were here. The northern lights. Wrapped in his arms, the cold air stinging my cheeks, I tilted my head back and gasped as waves of green and purple shimmered across the sky like magic. Adrien, I whispered, breathless. It's everything I dreamed of. He tightened his hold around me, his voice low in my ear. Good, because I promised you once, remember, that you'd see them one day. I smiled, blinking back tears. 2 years, countless kisses, endless laughter, mornings waking up tangled together, and he still found ways to make me melt. And it was easier now, too. I'd taken a new opportunity, one that meant leaving the company. The office had been sad to see me go, but happy for me. And Adrien had been the first to push me toward it, because that's what love looked like with him. Silent support, steady faith, always wanting me to shine. The bonus, no more hiding. We didn't have to sneak kisses in boardrooms anymore. We could just be. I turned in his arms, pressing my lips to his. I love you, I murmured, the aurora dancing above us. I love you too, he said softly. But something in his tone made me pause. When I pulled back, his jaw was tight, eyes glittering with nerves I rarely saw on him. Adrien? He cleared his throat, and then, just like that, he stepped back, dropped to one knee in the snow, and pulled a small silver band from his pocket. My brain stopped working. Oh my God, I breathed. He looked up at me, voice trembling but steady. Cameron Hale, from the moment you accidentally video called me naked, you turned my entire world upside down, and I don't ever want it right side up again. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision, but I still managed a choked laugh. So this is your grand plan? Trap me with a ring because you couldn't handle my plant collection forever? His lips twitched. Yes, that's exactly it. I launched myself at him, nearly knocking him over into the snow, and kissed him hard. Of course. Yes, you grumpy idiot, I whispered against his lips, tears freezing on my cheeks, love burning in my chest. He slipped the ring on my finger, his hands shaking. I stared at it through watery eyes, then back at him, smiling so wide it hurt. Above us, the northern lights flared brighter. Adrien kissed me again, murmuring with a smirk, Maybe we were destined for this. You and me. And now that you're mine, I can see you naked anytime, any day. I shoved him lightly, laughing through tears. Unbelievable. You propose under the aurora and still make it about my accidental flashing incident? Of course, he deadpanned. It's the best decision you've ever made. Pretty sure saying yes just topped it. I shot back. We kissed again, snow falling around us, the lights dancing overhead, our laughter tangled with promises of forever. And just like that, the story that started with the most humiliating mistake of my life ended with the best yes I'd ever spoken. The end. What would you do if you accidentally humiliated yourself in front of your boss? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become part of our Rainbow Force, and consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.